like I mentioned, we have two experts here today to help us discuss the right way to build an ideal sales culture. Um, and without further ado, Christina and John, thank you both so much for taking the time out of your day to join us and bless us with your knowledge and expertise. And welcome to a Sales Hacker webinar.
Woohoo! Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, we're stoked to have you guys as well. But before we go into the juice of the conversation, I do like to get a bit more of an introduction from both of you so we can get a bit more acquainted. So I'll start with you, John. John, do you mind just giving us a bit of background on yourself, what you're all about, so the audience and everybody can get a bit more acquainted with you?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm John Irvine, and I'm head of business development at Blueboard Inc. I'd like to say we're the world's leading experiential rewards platform and company. And I've been in the engagement, recognition, incentive space for a lot longer than I like to admit, and have met and worked with and interacted with hundreds of sales leaders and HR leaders, et cetera, over the years. And I've learned a lot of things, I like to think, from people smarter than me about what is the right thing to do in certain situations. And I've had some pretty good examples about what's the wrong thing to do. So I bring both of those. And I do want to share that I'm in Michigan. So we got John from Grand Rapids, Michigan represent, and Nolan, I used to live in Lake Orion. So I'm very familiar with your whereabouts. I'm excited to be here. I'm very passionate about the subject.
Awesome. John, I know, like in our pre-call, I know you're very well suited for what we're speaking to today. So I'm stoked to have you here and excited to learn from you as well. Christina, thank you so much for being here. Please just give us a bit more about yourself, who you are, what you're all about.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Brady. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Sales Assembly. I'm in Chicago, so maybe one or two folks in Chicago. I am also here in Chicago. A little bit about me. I got my start in tech at Groupon back in 2007, 2008, when they were much more of a baby bird than they are right now. Worked my way up there, first as an individual contributor, and then a frontline leader, and then a second line leader. And then I was there launching pilots before I moved over to Glassdoor and helped open the Chicago office for Glassdoor, hired around 400 people, scaled the team from 8 to 80 million before coming over to Sales Assembly. And now doing what I've done for prior tech companies and helping tech companies en masse do the same thing kind of all at once. My specialty, and while I'm here, is when I'm working on a one-to-one basis, I work a lot with second and third line leadership and helping them be effective, helping them learn how to communicate, helping them learn how to properly motivate, and kind of the psychology of what role-based communication looks like, i.e. when I'm talking to somebody who is my friend and now suddenly that same person is in an office with me and we have a different role, how does that change the way that we think and interact, and how to get through things like tough conversations, and how to fight professionally, and how to manage up and manage down. So I get really into the details just around the human connectivity component of working together in this industry. So I obviously geek out over it too. It's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Christina. Very happy that you're here to help us get through this content. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So that's that. We know each other. All the boring stuff's out of the way. So let's dive into it. I'm excited. Okay. So I'm going to start off with this. So there's this whole idea of, a myth of a coin operated seller, that sellers are only motivated through money. I want to get your guys' thoughts to kind of kick off this conversation around that. And I feel like that's starting to change. Do you still think the main motivator for many reps or for sales individuals is still money? John, what are your thoughts?
I don't think that this motivator for sales reps, the primary motivator for sales reps, has ever been just money. Money is a means to an end. So it's, what does somebody want to do with that money? What does that money represent in their life? I had a great line. Somebody say a great line to me the other day. If somebody was really just motivated by money, they'd be doing something illegal, right? They'd be breaking the law to get money, because that's the quickest way to get cash, I guess. I'm told, I've read. So it's really all about what do people want to do with the money? What does it represent to them? Just read an article today, as a matter of fact, and I'll reference it a couple times probably because it really resonated with me. And it was from Harvard Business Review, and I think it just came out today. talking about how one of the most effective ways to get people to be passionate about the workplace is to embrace what they're passionate about outside of the workplace. That then the work becomes a conduit to their passion. And whether that passion is their children, their significant other, their hobbies, skydiving, flying planes, whatever, that's what the money's for. So if I'm talking to a salesperson, they say, well, I got to beat my quota because I want to make X, Y, and Z. Why? No, the old line used to be that you start your annual planning with a salesperson by saying, what do you want to make this year? What's your income target? No. The right conversation is, what do you want to accomplish in your life? And then let's talk about how we as an organization can help you do that. So I don't think it's ever been about money, and it definitely is not today.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. I loved how you kind of broke that down, where it's not when you're actually in the moment of it. It's like, great, okay, I got a great commission check, or I got a great amount of money here. But then ultimately it's like, yeah, that's going towards something. Like for me, I'm going to go buy a new set of golf clubs or something. Right. So it's cool, but you don't think about that in the moment, right? About when it's coming in. So I like that point there. Christina, do you have any thoughts on that?
I want to make the identical point. We view this way too simplistically versus, at the end of the day, you could say people are money motivated. You could say people are food motivated. You could say people are shelter motivated, right? You could say people are clothing motivated. At the end of the day, does what I'm spending the majority of my time in my life, is that going to lead to the lifestyle and the work-life balance or lack thereof that I want, right? At the end of the day, if you think of the only non-renewable resource in the world, it's time. When you spend time, you're not going to get that back. So the idea of being coin operated just comes down to, is it a worthwhile exchange? Am I getting out of the time I'm spending here doing the things that I'm doing that I will look back on this years to come and say, that was a really good way that I spent something I will never, ever get back, because it allowed me to buy my dream home. It allowed me to support my children. It allowed me to buy the dream car that I always wanted to drive down the street. It allowed me to invest, right? So I think sales managers who only focus on that, like, oh, they're super money motivated. John's exactly right. Right? It's, what are you spending the money on? What's it all leading to? What part of your story is this, and where are you? And is this job going to help you get there? And if the answer is yes, fantastic. If the answer is no, we should probably also talk about that, because you also owe it to all of your people to find out their motivations, like John said. And if this isn't it, that's okay. You can give them the gift of finding something that is, because again, we don't get the time back, right? We don't. Don't rob it of yourself. Don't rob it from others.
Yeah.
Christina just made something pop into my head that I hadn't thought of in a long time. This is a gift from my kids. That's the Life is Good brand, right?
I love that brand.
I do too. One of the two brothers that founded it, whose name I'm embarrassed that I can't remember, saw a talk by him. It was great. And it was all around gratitude is the superpower, right? About being thankful. And they changed their whole language around, I have to go to work. I have to go get my hair cut. I have to do this or that. I get to go to work. I get to make a sales call. I get to cut the lawn, whatever. I get to cut the lawn because I have a house, right? I get to go to work because I have a job, and that job is going to allow me to continue to learn to fly airplanes, right? If you could change the mindset of a salesperson, especially from, I got to meet quota and I got to get this $5,000 check, to, I get to make sales calls today because I work for a really cool company and I love what I do and the outcomes are going to be powerful. That's now an emotional connection. And I'll build on that for a second. Companies are great at transactions. I'm fascinated by your role, Christina. I'm fascinated by it because this is something I'm very passionate about. Companies are great at transactions. Companies suck at emotions. Right? They're really bad at emotions. And the easiest relationship with a salesperson is a transactional relationship, right? It's all about dollars or products or units or whatever it is. So it's infinitely measurable, and good gracious, sales leaders have a lot of data to pour through today, which ultimately makes it even more transactional. But how do you create an emotional interaction with a salesperson? Because salespeople, the important word there is people. They're just people. And we as human beings are inherently and primarily emotional creatures. That's what we bring to the office and to work and to every call every day. How do we interact with that individual in an enduring and genuine emotional way and account for the fact that it's an emotional being? Now you can see why I'm so fascinated with your role, Christina, because it's a thing I'm passionate about.
Love it. I love it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I've heard that like before, where I get to do this, I get to do that, I get to do this, and it's like I don't think, at least for myself, that I don't put myself in that kind of mindset enough, right? Because it's like I'm blessed to have a fantastic job. I'm blessed to have a house, like a house over a shelter over my head. So like thinking that way not only will relieve stress moving forward, but it will also just make you enjoy the present moment much more, I think. So thank you for bringing that up, because it joggled some stuff in my mind too. Awesome. Okay, so I love the points on how money. Almost we need to restart the whole conversation around I'm money motivated. It's like, okay, well, what does that money motivation mean, right?
Cool.
Where does it go, right? But then there's also other things that organizations are starting to kind of move towards, in terms of adding value to their reps and additional value. What else have you or could you put in place within an organization, John? I'm sure you have some thoughts on this, to add additional value outside of that kind of money motivated mindset.
Yeah, I'll come back to the concept of passions. There's a lot of things that sales leaders can do in terms of building a sales culture that account for the fact that these are individuals and not just coin operated machines. They're not automatons like people thought of them back in the 1920s, right? Which is really where it all started. But the concept of experiences, yeah, that's what we do, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. The concept of giving people the chance to grow and to grow and learn from each other. I mean, a sales organization should have a healthy competition, but a lot of collaboration, right? It can quickly become toxic. And that's when it really becomes a transactional relationship, because I'm only there because I've got the golden handcuffs, right? I'm making a lot of money and I don't want to walk away from that, but I hate my job and I hate my company. So it's really about putting things in place to intentionally help people connect. And it goes back to the concept of passions outside the workplace, right? What are your people passionate about? How can you help them find that? We have clients, again, I'm just not a commercial for us, but we have clients who, one of the benefits of the experiences that people choose from with us is they learn about their salespeople. Mm-hmm. I would have no idea that Alice wanted to learn to fly, right? Or that Steve always wanted to swim with sharks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's about genuine interaction and engagement versus when you get together, what are you talking about? Is it just numbers? I was on a call with a sales leader the other day, and I loved what he had to say. He said, we can slack about numbers all day long. When I get together once a week with my salespeople, we never talk about numbers. And his turnover is incredibly low. And his sales organization is performing like fire because they feel part of something good. And at the end of the day, that's what people want. They want to feel heard. They want to be in an emotionally safe place. And they want to feel part of something good. I've seen that again and again. It's so important.
Yeah. Christina, do you have anything on that?
I do. I would say to think about the idea of motivation outside of competition. Like I often think people are like, oh, we have to do a spiff. We have to do a contest. Like, how do we improve the motivation and get better performance? And it's always tied to a competition. And the problem, maybe it's the wrong word, but the problem with that is that a lot of leaders who lack proper self-awareness around how to motivate different individuals will always paint a sales contest based on their own likes, right? Because you're thinking of what would be a really fun winnings, or like how much would people want to earn, or what would people want to buy. And if they're not aware of, this actually isn't about me, it's about the people, they'll do something in their own image instead of somebody else's. So back when I was working at a prior company, I remember it was a big sales contest. It was the end of the fiscal year, and every individual on the team, if you placed first out of 5, you got a certain cash prize, right? And look, cash is still king, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'll go for the money. If you can give it to me in a gift card, even better, because I don't want to pay taxes on it. But fine, like cash is king. Okay, great. The secondary piece of it was if the entire team hit X number, then we won an outing to an escape room. And I could tell that my manager at the time loved a concept like that. But me, as a naturally anxious and introverted person, the idea of going into an escape room with all of my coworkers and having timed pressure to solve riddles as an incentive just wasn't hitting it for me. So look, at the end of the day, I was able to say, okay, yeah, like let's get this team thing. But every day it was like, the escape room is coming. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And like, I'm a team player and I want the team to win. But at the end of the day, be self-aware on what's going to motivate your team. Maybe, and ask them, right? Like you can ask your team what motivates them. You can ask them what excites them. You can have them ask if a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Will this motivate you? Do you like this? And I know it's not a commercial for Blue Board, but that's almost kind of what they do, is they make it easier for you to connect with your people to understand what truly motivates them. Because some people it's money, others it's experiences, others it's going to be going to a happy hour or winning a dinner. But your team is hopefully made up of a lot of different individuals with different backgrounds. And so simply asking them what motivates them and what would get them out of bed in the morning to do more than they did yesterday. And also motivate your people and reward them outside of a contest. It's not all about winning a competition when it comes to morale and motivation.
Wow, that is so spot on. That I've seen that again and again and again. I just got to echo that. The easiest thing for sales leaders to do is a contest, number one. Well, in any contest, there are winners and there are, guess what, losers.
Right.
And if it's a repetitive contest, i.e., it's the same structure every year, every quarter, especially every the annual President's Club, whatever, everybody knows who's going to win, right? And so it's the same people every year, but maybe a little bit of turnover. So it's a demotivator for everybody else in the sales force, and usually nothing else is in place for that. The second thing I agree with completely is that, I've done group travel, group incentive trips, right? And most of the time, we're going to Cabo San Lucas because the CEO wants to go to Cabo San Lucas. We're going to Zurich because the president likes Zurich. She and her husband just were there and she loved it. She wants to go back. And that's just wrong at its core. Not a Blue Board commercial, but one of the things we bring to the table is that people get to choose from thousands of experiences and they choose their own, right? The only thing the sales leader does is choose the budget. Best structure, and I could riff on this for a long time, but I don't want to talk too long. The best structure is always going to be what's called an open structure, which is if you hit this objective or your objective, whatever, you win. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not a competition. It's not the top 50 people, right? Because now that's, from a budgeting standpoint, that's easy. From a motivational standpoint, it's poor, right? It just isn't as effective. There should always be more. And in terms of anything to do with incentives, I say this as a rewards company. The number one thing is rule structure, which is what Christina talked about first. The second thing is communication. How is it communicated? And then the third thing is going to be, what's the reward, right? If the first two aren't in place and aren't appropriate, a good structure and a really good communication plan, then the third doesn't matter, right? And I could go all off about cash because cash is a non-event and it's just compensation. It's a direct deposit that in many cases I don't even notice went in, right? It's just there. It happens. Okay, I'll stop
now. No, I love it. This is fantastic. And it's I totally agree with you. So what you're saying is that, instead of having, I think, well, I was going to come to this later, but now that you brought it up, instead of having kind of a across the board, everyone competing for the same situation, there's kind of different tiers for certain areas that, certain people will have to hit. It's like, okay, if you get here, you get X. If you get here, you get X, instead of them all kind of going to the same piece. How have you seen that, increase productivity or motivation within the teams by kind of taking that approach, then rather than kind of making everybody at the even playing field?
Oh, it can be dramatic. People want to feel in control of their own destiny. That's number one. So my success is dependent on what I do. I'm not dependent on Christina failing, right? That means I get to go, or I get to go to the escape room, which I'd probably get her spot anyway. She didn't want to go. But no, I'm in control of my own destiny, and the effect I've seen it have dramatic effect. I saw a client of ours have a 10% lift across a $2 billion channel as a direct result of individually based incentives. And it wasn't cash. It was all non-cash. They still got paid. They were still getting the compensation. This was on top of compensation, which means it's separate. And that's important. You can't confuse learning to fly a plane or a balloon ride over the Sonoma Desert or going to Zurich with compensation. But if you got $2,500 this quarter, that's just compensation. And the second thing is, if I give you $5,000 and say, go on a nice vacation, you choose. In most cases, people can't, this concept of justifiability. In most cases, people can't justify not doing something responsible with most or all of that money. They're not going to go on that bucket list trip to Iceland that they've always wanted. But if you just give them an experience that includes the option of a bucket list trip to Iceland, they're going to go on that trip guilt-free. And they're going to enjoy it. And they're going to have an emotional connection with the employer that gave it to them that they won't have with a $5,000 check, most of which went into the 401k or to fix the deck. It's a whole different scenario. So justifiability is really important, and I've seen it be incredibly successful.
I love that point. That's a really good point that I know that I've struggled with, because it's like, when I get say I get, a commission check, then I want to put it into some sort of savings or any way place like that, which makes it very hard for me to actually go and put it somewhere that I know will, like a life experience that will actually make my situation much better if I were to go. So by taking that approach that you just mentioned, where, it's a guilt-free piece of what you like, that is your compensation piece, that would do wonders for me. So like, I resonated very well with that. Christina, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I'll
Yeah.
keep adding in. I'll keep sprinkling in here.
Please.
When I think high level of sales incentive programs, boosting morale, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? Because what you also don't want, you don't want spiff fatigue. You don't want to feel like we're constantly running a marathon. Like there are some sales cultures that feel like every month or every quarter is like, go, 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 go. And that gets fatiguing after a while. And suddenly the job starts to feel more like it is my job to succeed during these contests. And then you actually lose production when you don't have one. You actually wind up with people who lose track of what is my normal day-to-day job that I am paid for doing, that I should be producing consistent results. And instead it becomes all about, well, we had a spiff last year, so I'm not going to do the same performance this year until I have the same spiff as last year, because otherwise I'm making less. Like we hear that a lot. Companies who heavily rely on compensated contests will often have people who feel like their pay is declining, because when you remove the spiff, people look at their income as their income. They don't look at it like my on-target earnings as an account executive was $150,000. I made 180 last year because of overperformance in contests. Next year, even if I make 175, $25,000 higher than my on-target earning, I feel like I made less. I feel like you're paying me less for the same amount of work, because you wind up with that spiff fatigue where I get very confused about what is the normal day-to-day work and what is extra on top of that that is not meant to be scalable and repeatable. So if you are looking at ways to, one, incent consistent, deliberate performance, you want to think about anything that goes on top of that is, what is the length of time that you're going to be running this sprint or this marathon? What is the reward that you want? What does the structure look like? And what is the desired outcome? Run it through those filters, because at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be a contest, right? One of the things in there could be, we are consistently motivating our individuals to do great work by recognizing when they do something exemplary, by calling them out in front of their peers, by giving them a title bump, by giving them an extra hot account that maybe they would not have gotten otherwise, by giving them the opportunity to act in a team lead capacity, by doing a lot of positive reinforcement in a group setting. Like, there's a lot of ways as you're moving throughout the course of the year to motivate your people to do their job really, really well that isn't tied to extra compensation, so that when you do tie it to extra compensation, it means so much more. And it's not just going from one contest to the next contest to the next contest. It should feel special. And often we hear companies all the time talk about spiff and contest fatigue. And then they wonder why year over year their team's performance is declining. And it's because you made that the normal. You made it a part of the everyday, and it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. I love the insight of how, make it more of a like a rather than a repetitive situation, make it much more kind of an experiential, lack for better words, but like personalized kind of experience for everybody. I think is a really good, really cool approach. I do have a question from someone in the audience here that, since we're on the topic here, a lot of the time on the other side, commissions can be capped or uncapped. Do you see the same kind of idea or process with, say, sales incentives? Should they be capped? Should there not be? Can they kind of exceed however they want? What do you think on that, John?
Well, it depends is the answer. Sales incentives are never a one size fits all. I like what Christina said about the structure and the rewards and what are the outcomes, and then on top, what's the selling situation? Every organization has different challenges that they're trying to address, and assuming, great point, that it isn't spiff, and they don't think it's income because it's not cash. It can be a valid tool. I'm not a fan of caps. I'm a believer that if you earn it, you earn it. Congratulations. And if you have to cap the incentive program, then there's probably something wrong with your design of your incentive program. That would be my pushback. You can, however, achieve a similar thing just by having tiered rewards. So everybody who beats quota by 2,500 or 25% is going to get, this level of experience, or is going to get a trip to anywhere they want, or Disney World, or whatever the reward is, whatever the non-cash reward is. I would not use cash. As Christina said, it's income. And I made 20 grand in spiffs last year, and I only made 10 grand this year. You guys are taking money out of my pocket. No. That's why it's really important from a business perspective for the two to be separate. But also because then I'm not going to feel like I'm not getting paid as much if you decide to then cap it. So as everybody who hits this gets 5 grand, everybody hits this gets 2,500. If it's cash, I'm comparing it to last year's cash because that's fungible. I can figure that out. If it's an experience, or if it's a reward, a different type of reward that I don't necessarily know the value of, I'm not going to compare it to how much I earned last year. So, but in general, to your specific question, I'd say I would avoid caps if at all possible. And if I need to cap my budget, I'm going to do it by giving out tiers of rewards for levels of success.
Mm-hmm. I also think we're talking about potentially two things that we're overlapping a little bit here. There is your standard sales on target earning plan, which in most cases in this industry is uncapped. And I'll come back to that in a moment. And then there's this idea of what rewards do we have that are seemingly on top of those on target earnings. If you are doing anything that is on top of OTE, i.e. on top of your regular compensation plan on dollars closed or deals closed or renewal logos or whatever it may be, that should be budget based, right? You don't want to be running contests with no budget. Like, you want to work with your finance team to determine we need to push on XYZ behavior, contracts sent, contracts closed, contracts move to discovery, more MQLs, more SQLs, right? Contest is like, we're going to push the more button. There should be a budget behind that, which is we are willing to invest $30,000 of budget to get $90,000 of outcome out of the selling team, right? There's a give and a take there when it is something on top of on target earnings. On the flip side, when you're talking about sales incentives as it relates to their on target earnings, i.e., their salary plan, their bonus plan, their commissions plan, I think it's easy to think we should cap that because we're going to get to a point where we're paying sellers way too much money. Cap the money, cap the results, right? Typically, when folks are performing on top of what their normal expectations are, the company is winning and they are winning. Your compensation plan should be built so that even if you are paying somebody significantly more than their on target earning, they're also producing more than their on target earning. And so you are in the green. In this case, what I would look at is accelerators and decelerators, right? Because you want to motivate the right behavior. A lot of compensation plans that I have built does an accelerator above 100% to target and a decelerator below 100% to target as it comes to cash comp. So for example, if I hit 100% of my sales target, I get 100% of the bonus component of my on target earnings. If I hit 105% of my quota, I actually make 110% of the bonus portion of my on target earnings. So I'm actually accelerating as I continue, which is going to push me to keep generating more dollars, which in a sense, everybody wins. Now, to pay for that, you can do it on the flip side as well, where if you have folks who are hitting 95% of their target, maybe they're only making 90% of their on target earnings. If they're hitting 80%, maybe they're only making 70% of their on target earnings. So you can play with the behavior by manipulating the money, but in general, as a last resort, capping commissions for overperformers is very, very dangerous. You'll actually wind up capping the company growth by doing that, like every single time. There is no situation where a company wins by capping commissions on their overperformers. So I would advise strongly not to do that.
I'm going to echo that 100%. I've seen it, and the one thing that does happen is that your cost of sales goes down short term because the top performers are going to leave.
Yep. Or push their deal into next year, right?
Oh yeah, cannibalizing the year. Absolutely. That absolutely happens. Another thing I'll say that for anybody considering a sales incentive is that totally echo Christina's point, is that the term sales incentive in my head, and I believe best practice, means that it is totally a separate, different, unique, special thing. It cannot be confused with my comp plan. Right? If it's confused, it's a bad incentive program. Just that simple. Sorry, it is. And another thing is, for people who are considering putting one in place, is that there are two types of budgets. It's true with most things, but it's true with incentives as well. There's open and closed. And a closed budget is nice. It's convenient. I'm going to spend 30 grand, and I know what I'm going to spend, and it's my top 17 people, and they're all going to get X, right? Versus everybody who does this thing gets this, right? I still have to budget it, so I've got to guess how many people are going to get it, right? But in a good, my opinion, and well-run and understood organization, if you go over because you had too much success, okay, we'll handle that, right? It's a good problem. I had a client whose program was 3 times the original budget, and he got a promotion because it was such a success. So, I mean, that it's really, really important. And it's not something that can be lost. First question is, do you have an open or a closed budget? Because that'll define your structure.
Totally. Love it. Awesome, guys. Well, okay. That was fantastic. I want to move on to another piece of the puzzle here. And that's fulfillment, right? Everybody wants to be fulfilled in their day-to-day job, right? Like if I'm not feeling fulfilled personally, I'm not going to put my maximized effort into my day-to-day tasks, right? And everything that I'm doing and to produce the most, right? So I want to be stoked. I want to be ready to get up every morning and just absolutely knock it out of the park. But how, as leaders, how have you been able to, understand employee fulfillment, right? Is it top of mind for most sales leaders? Do you think it is? What are your thoughts on that? I'll start with you, Christina.
I think most sales leaders, especially if they're early in their career, they're so focused on being liked by their team. They want to be a cool manager. They want everyone to like them. They need that social acceptance. as a leader in order to build their confidence. They also enter the arena with something to prove. I want to have a high producing team. I want to show that I have the right leadership chops. I have a lot of ideas that I want to share with the organization. And the problem is there's not always a lot of experience or process that goes along with that. So when a leader enters an arena with a new team, or even some leaders who haven't had a lot of training in this area, and that happens, right? A lot of leaders kind of pushed in the pool and they've just stayed there treading water, sometimes for years, and they've never had proper training around things like this. And so what they lean on for fulfillment is, as long as my people are producing and hitting target and making money, and as long as I'm a cool manager that they like, they're going to love this job. Nobody's going to go anywhere. Yeah. Right. And then that starts to stick around for too long, and it winds up being the absence in building real relationships with your people. There is career development that is missing. There is critical skills and points where the people on your team need you to help them or push them or manage them up or manage them out that are simply missed, because as a manager, you're often like 10,000 foot view or 10-foot view. I'm going to pick one, right? And most of them are like, they either focus way too in on each individual and they lose sight of the entire team and what's important to the company, or they go too high. And you have people on the team who are floundering, right? There's also a lot of managers who don't know how to ask their people for feedback and for what they want. And the way that you don't do it is sit in a room one-on-one and say, how do you like to be managed? Do you have any feedback for me? Right? When you put your people in a position like that, it's highly threatening. You are my manager. You are the person who is in control of my career and my success. And doesn't feel like giving you feedback is a very safe place, because unless I tell you everything you want to hear, what does that mean for me? And so where I'm getting at is that you have a lot of leaders with their people who miss understanding how to make their people feel fulfilled. And the answer is building a very real and very holistic relationship with them. The answer is sharing what motivates you and inviting them to do so. The answer is celebrating achievements outside of work. The answer, as John mentioned earlier, is being bought in on what are their personal and professional goals, i.e., what's going to get you out of bed to do this job on the hardest possible day. Do you have a motivator that's going to do that? What is it? And how do I help? Right? It's being ingrained at that level to understand as a team to be fulfilled. We have to hit these numbers. We have to hit these targets. We have to close these deals. We have to sell these SKUs. But as a team of individual people, I should have 10 different individual plans that I am on, that I am leading and puppeting as time goes through, because fulfillment is on an individual level, and your job as a leader is to find the individual level and then build out to the team level. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world, truly, being a frontline leader, because managing all of that while the company's hounding you for a number is really difficult. So people skip it.
Mm-hmm. John, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm just hurting my neck from nodding too hard. So I agree 100% with everything that Christina just said. Culture, whether it's sales culture or just the entire organization's culture, culture is a top-down phenomenon. But I like to counter that with, but all politics is local, right? So you can be part of a large organization, and if you have a really culturally aware and effective sales leader, but a frontline manager who's doing everything that Christina was talking about, right? You're going to have a bad culture in, Osceola or, Grand Rapids, because it's local. So you've got an inexperienced bad manager. And the question was originally about fulfillment. And fulfilled salespeople can be a challenge, almost more than most other roles in an organization, because of the inherent nature of the role. Most people are measured, I don't care what the MBOs say, it's kind of gray. Not a lot of gray about sales. You hit your quota or you did not, right? And then there's a lot of other stuff involved as well. So how do we break away from that? Because fulfilled employees feel connected to the mission of the organization, and I mean the organization as a whole, and of the sales organization, connected to the core values. They find meaning in their work. They have meaningful relationships with other people at work. Traditionally on engagement surveys, that's one of the leading indicators of somebody's overall engagement score is the answer to the question, do you have a best friend at work? And if the answer to that is yes, odds are very high that's a highly engaged individual. And if it's no, the odds are it's not. And that applies to salespeople just as much as it does to anybody else. In sales, engaged salespeople aren't looking for a job. I can tell you, We have salespeople at our company that I would bet could probably make more money at another company down the street, or not in our industry. But they are so passionate about the product, about the impact we have on people's lives, about our mission as a company, and about the people that they work with. I mean, I've talked to them about it. They love the company. They don't want to leave. And no, it's not. It's not all puppies and rainbows. Trust me. It's, no company is perfect, but it's a heck of a good place to work, and it's a very cool product. And that's why they don't leave, because they feel a high degree of fulfillment. And that's, I think that should be the goal of every sales leader, because as long as you've got your learning and development in place, and your metrics are good, and your compensation plan is good, and the product is good as a whole, it should be a little bit of auto run, right? And then your job is the care, feeding, and growth of the people in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I couldn't agree with what you said more there, because for me, like fulfillment, recognition, and believing in what I'm doing is what drives me. That's my motivation, right? So I don't want to be one of those people that I'm a number, right? I'm just here. I'm just helping. I'm helping the organization just make revenue for somebody else, right? Whereas when I know how I'm kind of affecting the organization as a whole, then I perform better, because I get to actually see that, hey, what I'm doing here is actually having an impact, and it's actually helping this organization grow as a whole, right? And then you feel more part of it, and that's how the culture builds, right? I would like to ask you guys both on a personal level, both being leaders in your space. What does fulfillment mean to each of you? Christina, I'll ask you first.
I mean, I actually go back to something I said in the beginning, that just because of my background and what I've been through and what I've seen, I take the concept of time and memories very, very preciously. And I think about the concept that every person that you meet is going to contribute to the stairs that lead you for the rest of your life. And to me, it's, what are the stairs made out of? Like, my stairs that are getting me where I'm going, are they made of people who are willingly lifting me up? Are they made of people that I am stepping on? Are they made of moments where I cried because I felt that I wasted my time, or I hated my job, or I felt like I was being discriminated against? What am I walking on that's kind of creating this journey? And every role that I'm in, is it worth, am I doing good in the world? Am I leaving a mark in a positive way, even just for one person, right? As a salesperson, selling your product, if you don't think your product helps people, you shouldn't sell that. Right? Because every single time as a salesperson or a leader that somebody bought our product, I needed to know for a fact that we just made their life better, their company better in some way. And so for me, it's fulfillment is looking for little ways that I can make an impact. And when people look back on me and the work that I do, I want it to be a light. I want it to be something that makes them smile and advances them where they're going. And that can be through selling my product, or spending my time, or having a really difficult conversation, or calling out bigotry, whatever it may be. To me, fulfillment comes down to impact. And when that starts to deteriorate, the only self-awareness you need to have in that moment is, if I have stopped making the impact that I need to feel proud of the life that I am living, then I need to be strong enough to go do something else and help other people along the way. So to me, fulfillment is the impact. What am I doing every day?
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I can hear the passion in how you're saying that. So I appreciate that. John, what about you?
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, what she said. That's a great answer. And I think mine will be similar. It's, well, first of all, for me, fulfillment starts with my family, right? And, we'll talk about not being coin operated, right? Everything's a means to an end. So it starts with there. But if I expand out, right, it is about the impact. That's why I said what she said about the impact I have on others. I love to spend time with, it's my favorite part of my week, is when I get to spend time with and mentor people, people at the company or otherwise, and learn from them, which is always the case, by the way. It's always a two-way street. And then see the difference in their lives. I had a direct report. I said, I said to her, I want you to understand, I'd like you to stay here for as long as you possibly can. But I don't care about anything else other than you say in 10 years, you look back and say, the time I spent with John made me better. It was valuable to me. It was important and it was impactful. That's all I care about, because then you'll remember the company fondly too. And that to me, and she does. And that to me is really the most powerful thing from a work perspective. I can tell you, and I'll tell you a little sales thing. We talk about people being coin operated. My first pure sales job was for a service company, and had not long since started. And my direct report, VP of Sales, said to me, "What do you want to accomplish?" And it wasn't what do you want to earn; it was what do you want to accomplish. And we had just lost a couple of accounts, and so we had some empty cubicles just outside his office. And I said, my goal really is to fill those cubicles, because if they're filled, it means I've sold something, and I've had a difference. So people will be employed, and the company will be better. It wasn't just about the money. And I would look at the people in those cubes, and I would think to myself, I did that, and there was a real sense of fulfillment there. I didn't do it alone, obviously, but I did it. So there's fulfillment of interactions with other people, obviously with family, and then accomplishments at work. And I think that's really what we talk about fulfilled employees. It really is a multi-pronged story.
Mm-hmm. And to follow on top of that, how, just for some tips for some of the other leaders that are on the call, and I know how Christina, you were saying, instead of going kind of so focused per individual, but also looking at a team as a whole, how have you been able to, as a leader, been able to kind of understand, your team as a whole, but also on a personal level, what fulfillment or what motivates them to help kind of the overall success of the team? How have you been able to achieve that? Christina, I'll get your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, my leadership style is very much to be connected to my people and help them drive wherever they're going, right? So you're in the driver's seat, I'm in the passenger, I'm going to help you get where you're going. And if you need me to take over, we'll switch places real quick, and I'm going to switch right back, right? So for me, it's, if you're on my team, you have my 100% commitment to helping you be the best you possibly can. And you have to actually care, and you have to do the work, and that can be emotionally draining. And not everybody is wired for that level of emotional connection. So one, if you are that kind of person where in order to be successful, you have to build deep frameworks of connection, like some people naturally do that, then lean into that with your people. If you don't, there are methodologies that you can use to help you, like radical candor is one of them. If you haven't read the book, it's around caring personally so that you can challenge directly. And it's this idea of, how do I show my people that I care about them on a personal level and am bought in? How do I give them the praise and the feedback they need in the moment to understand that I am in their corner? And thus, in doing that, I earn the right to challenge them directly and be tough in the moments that I need to. And there's more of like a customized framework within radical candor. If you're not the kind of person, if you're like, how do I get in deep with my people? I don't know how to do, it's just not what I do. And some people are like that, right? When in doubt, find a methodology that works for you and practice it until it becomes natural. But there's no exception to the fact that to be a great leader, you have to understand your people, you have to understand what motivates them, and you have to actually care. You have to actually care. Your livelihood becomes their livelihood, right? Like the idea of servant leadership is, I am in this position not because I am over you. I'm not your ceiling, I'm your soil. Right? I'm going to plant you and help you go wherever you're going to go. And in order to do that, I have to understand how to care for you and what you need. And it might be different than the person next to you. And if I don't know that, I'm ineffective. I'm going to kill my garden. So it comes down to that, at the root of it, find a way to care. And if it's not natural for you, you can still be an incredible leader, but find a methodology that puts the practice in place for you so that you can connect with your people to help them where they have to go.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love the you're the soil and we're going to help you grow. That's a great analogy. I love that. John, I would love your thoughts too.
Yeah, I love that too. The best definition of leadership I've ever heard is that a leader's responsibility is to see the future and prepare the organization to meet it. And I think that's a powerful way to vector into the concept of leadership. And what we're talking about, and everything Christina was just talking about, is really about leadership, I would say, versus management. I think being a manager is a lot easier than being a leader. Being a manager is about filling out the forms, right? It's about checking the boxes. Being a leader takes real effort and emotional maturity. And you can't lead a team en masse, right? That's why if there are 500 salespeople, they don't all report to one woman, right? It's broken down into teams because there's more individualized management that is necessary. And it's not just by vertical or by geography. It's because there is a personal amount of interaction that's necessary and a certain amount of seeing the future. This is where leadership with individuals goes, seeing the future for that individual and preparing them to meet it, helping them prepare to meet it, right? And that can't be done in a vacuum, and that can't be done with 12 people. That's a one-on-one phenomenon. And it's difficult, but it's essential.
Yep. Love it. Love it. Okay. Well, you guys have been so awesome. I have a couple questions from the audience that I want to attack before I let you guys go. We have 5 minutes left. But I'm gonna throw one out from Mia here. She's asking any tips on how to manage both your own quota and leading your people while showing you care about their success when you're also having to focus on your own success. John, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm smiling. The term for that is player coach.
I was wondering, I was like, is this a player coach scenario? Because otherwise, I'm like,
like.
good news, their number is your number. Focus on them. But player coach is a little different. Yeah.
I think it must be. That is a real challenge. It really depends on the strength of the team and how self-directed they can be. Because if you've got to spend 75% of your time with your team, then you're probably going to not meet your numbers, depending on what your numbers are. I think I would have some very, very direct discussions with your direct report around what's the primary objective here. What's the priority for the organization? Because I've seen player coach scenarios where, and it's not uncommon, where it's just an undoable job. It's just not possible to be an individual contributor and also manage a team of people, especially if it's a high performance expectation. So I think I would probably focus on managing up. Other than that, I would caution. Make sure you get enough sleep and have some passions outside of the workplace because you've got a big job.
Yeah, awesome. Anything to add, Christina?
Player coach is really, really difficult. I think some would go so far as to say that it is a great temporary model for getting leaders ready to take on a full team. And every now and then kind of dipping their foot back in the well. But I think the data around the long-term sustainability of a player coach model doesn't look great. And it's because they are two completely different roles. Being an individual contributor is a full-time job. Being a leader is a full-time job. When you try to have somebody do both, it's like doing this exercise where you're like, but like for the rest of your life, right? It's like you're always going to screw one of them up. At the end of the day, you can't do both jobs perfectly well for a really, really long time. You just can't. And so you have to come down to what is the process that I'm going to do, and almost down to time chunks on the calendar of when am I in my individual contributor brain and when am I in my leadership brain? Because code switching between those two is really, really difficult, and it makes you lackluster at both. So it may come down to setting even boundaries with the team. One, you need to make sure that whatever you can automate and whatever resources you can have to help your team feed themselves, you put in place for them, right? So if there's a lot of common questions you're getting from your team, either train them to get the answers, or when you need to be in individual contributor mode, make sure that your team knows where they can go to get the help that they need to sustain the time. So it's really building a process around the fact that there's certain amounts of time that I need to be in individual contributor mode and hitting my number. And there's other amounts of time where I need to be in leader mode and I can't be thinking about that. If you need help, ask for it. You will likely need support in that. You will need other people. Maybe there's an up and coming leader on your team that you're currently managing. And maybe Monday afternoon and Friday afternoon, you let them try out being a team lead for a little bit and the questions go to them and you're preparing them for the next role, right? So I guess what I'm saying is don't take it all on all at once, because you can't. Like, you're going to have to find opportunities where other people can help you to keep the business going. And when things become unsustainable, it's a great question to ask your leadership of which you should prioritize, your own book or the team, and let them tell you what to do.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, okay, we are at the top of the hour. We're out of time. But Christina and John, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned so much. I know our audience did. Super engaging. This was fantastic. Thank you both so much for blessing us with your knowledge, your expertise, and everything. And anybody that, I'm sorry if we didn't get all of your questions. We tried, but if there are that weren't answered, please go follow John or Christina on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. But other than that, keep an eye out for the Sales Hacker registration. Blueboard, thank you so much for sponsoring this event. Go check them out. They're doing some incredible stuff. Really cool company. And again, thank you, John, Christina. You guys are awesome. And I really look forward to doing it again soon.